and welcome to Alpha Military TV. Thanks very much for tuning in once again and seeing what we're up to. My name is Richard Saunders. Now, if you'd like to support the channel, the best way you can do that, to be honest, is simply to subscribe. And if you like what you see, to give us a like as well. But if you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do so. The details are down below. Now, our review today is slightly different in as much as, unlike usual, we're not going to be looking at a rifle, but at a scope. Specifically, a new digital day-night infrared scope, the Pard NV008s. Now, there's two models in the range. There's the NV008s, and then there is the NV008s LRF, LRF standing for laser rangefinder. Now, I don't think it's unfair to say that Pard, they pretty much revolutionized the whole digital infrared scope scene for airgun use in particular with their range of products. The NV008s replaces your conventional glass scope, and you can use it in the day and night. And they also make a couple of NV007 products, which are infrared units that attach to the back of your regular glass scope and enable you to use it in an infrared mode. Now, Pard also makes some thermal scopes as well, but for airgun use, most people are going to be looking at the NV008 and the NV007. Now, the reason why I say Pard revolutionized the market is that the NV008 contains many of the features, if not all or more, than many of the larger, bulkier, more expensive products that air gunners will be familiar with. Products like the ATN X-Sight, although that has come down in price, and I know the Yukon scopes, for example. But where those products are big, the Pard is, as you can see, is very small and very compact. Also, those other products require you to use an external infrared torch, a torch that either bolts on the side of the scope or somewhere on your gun, to enable you to use it in infrared mode, whereas the NV008 has an integrated IR torch on the actual gun. Now, I would say that if you're going to be using the NV008s at longer distances with, say, an FAC air rifle or rimfire or certainly centerfire, then you are going to probably need an extra IR torch to give you that range. But air gunners, most of them are going to be using them on 12 foot-pound rifles at 20-30 meters for rats and rabbits, and that onboard torch is more than adequate for that kind of use. Now, what makes the new model, the NV008s, different, the LRF version different from previous model, is that it also incorporates a ballistic calculator. Now, ballistic calculators are nothing new. They've been around for some time. They're usually on far more expensive products. But if you take the other main IR scope that airgunners use, the ATN X-Sight 4K Pro, not only is that a big unit to start with and it weighs over 2 pounds, to use the ballistic calculator function you have to buy in addition the auxiliary ballistic laser rangefinder, which is another unit that bolts on the front of the scope, so it makes it even bigger and even longer. And then the rangefinder communicates via Bluetooth to the ballistic calculator on the scope and makes those adjustments for you. Now, I used that setup for quite some time. I found it very frustrating because the two products, the rangefinder and the scope, often wouldn't communicate with each other properly. The ballistic calculator would turn itself off. It was frustrating. I ditched the ABL and I just use the ATN on its own now, and it's fine. But because it's all integrated into one unit with the Pard, so far I haven't had any of those issues whatsoever. Now, the NV008s and NV008s LRF are both just coming out now. They're both distributed by Sportsman Gun Centre, and they're priced at the same level as the models that they're replacing. This LRF model retails for £899. Now, you're going to see, I would imagine, lots of videos coming out over the next few weeks and months where people will be comparing this model with the one it replaces, and they'll be talking about the menus, the sub-menus, and the features and the functions and what have you. And those videos will be, I'm sure, enormously helpful. In reality, though, a lot of those elements are very similar, if not the same, between the old model and the new model. And there's already plenty of videos out there showing you how to make all those adjustments and changes and use the features and the menus in the old version. So I'm not going to concentrate on that too much. Instead, I'm going to focus more on the ballistic calculator function in this new product, because I think that's the real game changer, and that's what people are going to want to buy this product for. I think it is important to understand what the 4 buttons on the top here do, the key functions that they address, and we'll go through that separately in a little bit of close-up. But before we do that, I want to talk specifically about this ballistic calculator function. So, what is it and what does it do? Well, most people are very familiar with the fact that, especially at 12 foot-pounds, air rifles are very loopy. The trajectory is very loopy. And what that means is that if you zero your rifle, especially a 2.2 at 12 foot-pounds at a specific distance, when you aim at targets further away or closer, then because of that looped trajectory, then you're going to have to compensate by aiming at different, above or below the target, called hold over or hold under. Now, some people will prefer to make adjustments on the elevation turret of their scope, but most people will aim off either with hold over or hold under, and that's fine. And I do that an awful lot myself. Now, what a ballistic calculator does is it basically makes that adjustment for you. It does it automatically for you, so you don't have to bother about range finding with a separate rangefinder. You don't have to bother about thinking about how many mil dots of holdover you need. You don't have to look at a little chart to tell you how many holdover points you need, all that kind of good stuff. The scope does it all for you. Now, in order to do that, then you will need to enter some information into one of the menus in here, and it is easy peasy. It really is. I'm not a technical person by any stretch, but even I managed to do it. It's very intuitive and very easy. Now, the data that you will need to put in will include things like the weight of your pellet, the velocity of your pellet. So you will need access to a chronograph to give you that velocity in feet per second or meters per second. It also requires you, for example, to enter in the height between the middle of your barrel and the middle of the scope in millimeters. And then, most importantly, it will require you to put in the ballistic coefficient of your pellet or your slug. Now, a lot of manufacturers will include that information on the tin of pellets or slugs, but not all of them do. Now, if you find that you don't have that information on your tin of pellets, there's a really good resource that you'll find online from Hard Air magazine. And if you do a search on Hard Air ballistic coefficient chart or something like that, it will give you basically a breakdown of ballistic coefficient details for a whole bunch of different brands of pellets by different calibers. Really, really good resource. So once you've looked that up, once you've entered all that information into your scope and you zeroed your scope for a specific distance, then you're all set to go with the ballistic calculator function. Now, I'm going to do a demo, hopefully, with 2 different rifles. I've got this, which is a 12 foot-pound Daystate Delta Wolf. It's a 12 foot-pound 2.2 rifle. So I'm going to hopefully show you through the scope, record through the scope, how the ballistic calculator works and how effective that is at hitting targets at different distances. And then we'll go through the whole same process again, and I'll put the Pard on an FAC rifle, probably my FX 2.5 caliber, and we'll see how that ballistic calculator works at longer distances. Now, before we do that, I just want to say a quick word about actually attaching the scope to your rifle. Now, the scope out of the box comes in 2 components. There's the scope and then there's this mount, and the 2 attached together with some screws underneath here. Then just screw them into the bottom of the scope. Now, every single Pard NV008 that I've ever used, when I've come to zero it, straight away I found that my pellets have hit really, really low, almost off the screen. And if you can get adjustment for the reticle ends up right at the bottom of the screen. and sometimes I've even run out. Now, the way to address that is by shimming the scope, and that basically means raising the rear part of the scope here. And Pard will, as part of your pack, will give you a set of shims for you to use, and we'll show you those in close-up in a little while. And they're basically little shims that go between the mount underneath here and the body of the scope, and that just raises the rear part of the scope up a little bit and enables you to zero your scope with the reticle back in the middle of the screen again. Now that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is that you can buy a bespoke Pard NV008 mount from Eagle Vision, which has lots of adjustment physically within the mount, and really is an excellent product, but as I say, it is an additional purchase. So with that, what we'll do is we'll go through some of the features on the scope in close-up, then we'll talk about these 4 buttons, and then we'll nip down the range and hopefully show you how the ballistic calculator works. So there are 5 buttons on the NV008s. Now these 4 buttons at the top here, they will also operate, take you through all the menus and the sub-menus and make the selections in that. But they also have some fairly fundamental functions that you'll use on a regular basis. And then the 5th button down here is the on-off button. Now, in addition to obviously switching it on and off, the button here operates a sleep mode, which is really good because let's say you're out shooting at night and you have the IR setting set up just so, and the magnification that you want. A short press on the power button will put you into a sleep mode to save some battery, and then when you want to activate the scope again, another short press will bring you out of the sleep mode and take you back to exactly the same IR setting and magnification setting that you had before. Now the front button here toggles you through the 2 magnification options. There's a 6.5 and a 13 times magnification. There's nothing in between, it's one or the other. The second button back here is where the magic happens, and it's the one that people are probably going to use the most. So a short press will activate the rangefinder in meters or yards. A second press will activate the ballistic calculator and bring up the amended reticle for you to aim at, specific to the distance that you've just range found over. And then a long press on this button will activate the record function to a mini SD card. This third button back here, that activates the day, night and the night mode. So automatically, once you press that, you will move out of the color day mode. It's a long press, moves you out of the color day mode and takes you into the black and white night mode. And then short presses on this button will take you through the 3 different IR brightness levels. And then this rear button here, that basically takes you into the menu and the sub-menus. There's a little laser flash symbol up here. You need to ignore that. Basically, for markets outside of the UK, the scope has a red dot laser function, but that's been disabled for the UK market. Now on the right side of the scope, there's a little disc here that if you unscrew that, you can see it gives you various different ports for downloading and charging and what have you, and you get a little cable here as part of your pack to do that. Now I must admit, I prefer to simply take the battery out. It's an 18650 battery. I prefer to take that and charge that separately, but you can, I guess, do it on board. And then there's also a slot here for you to put a mini SD card, the right way around, to enable you to record footage. And again, I prefer to take it out and put it in a separate reader. But you can, I suppose, download via that cable as well. Now, just to talk through this shimming process, because I know some people are put off by that, but it's very, very simple. You get two parts, basically. You get the mount, which attaches to the base of the scope, and obviously enables you to attach the scope to your rifle. Now, as you can hopefully see, there's 5 holes here, and the mount will attach to in different positions on those holes. Now, you get a couple of little Allen screws that you'll need to undo to release this mount, and you will get an Allen key provided as part of the pack to do that. And then also you're provided with a couple of little shims. Hopefully you can see those, and you're going to want to place those at the rear part of the scope, so the hole closest to your eye. Now, it's a little bit fiddly, but basically what you need to do is just put those. Now, you might need 1, you're more likely to need 2. I've always needed 2. And if you lay those on that rear hole there, and then reattach the mount through those shims. Now, if you need more shims because 2 isn't enough, and I have come across that before, then you can use little pieces of cut up Coke can to do that. But basically align those holes and then put the screw back into the mount through the shims. One there and sort of one at the back, I would. And then what you'll find is that will have raised up the scope at this rear section here just by 1 millimeter or 2, and that will make all the difference, enabling you to zero your scope with the reticle in the middle of the screen. So I popped out to one of my permissions where I can stretch the range out a little bit further from Reading Air Target Shooting Club, and I've got the Pard NV008s LRF with me. Now I'm going to put it on 2 rifles. This first rifle is a 12 foot-pound 2.2 rifle. It's a Daystate Delta Wolf, and I've zeroed the scope at 20 meters. So I'll put a target out at 30 meters, and then we'll push it back again to 40 meters. And I'm going to shoot 2 groups, one with the ballistic calculator turned on so you can see how much of a drop there is from that 20 meter zero, and then with the ballistic calculator turned on so that you can see how well it's compensating. As I said, we'll do that at 30 meters and at 40 meters. And then when we've done that with this rifle, I'll put the scope on a 2.5 caliber, about a 40 foot-pound FX Impact M3, and we'll go through the same process again, but at slightly longer ranges. So this is 30 meters with a 20 meter zero. So without the ballistic calculator, but I'm going to turn on the recording function. Here we go. Right, that's all 11 shots. Switch that off. Right, I'm going to reload, and then we'll do the same thing again with the ballistic calculator switched on. So this is 30 meters with the ballistic calculator turned on. Now, one thing I would say is that when you use the ballistic calculator, what you see through the scope is that once you've range found and then activated the calculator, you get a yellow cross appears on the vertical plane of the reticle to tell you what your revised aim point is. Now, I obviously see that when I'm shooting through the scope, but I've noticed when you're recording, you don't see that yellow cross, unfortunately. So it will just look like I'm holding over. But the point to which I'm holding over through the scope would actually be a yellow cross. Anyway, let's see how we get on. Okay, so this is our group with the ballistic calculator switched off. Not a great group, but as you can see, most of the group is below the bullseye. I'm going to say probably about half a mil dot, maybe a mil dot. And then that's our group with the ballistic calculator turned on, which has just made that adjustment and pretty much punched out the middle of the bullseye. Right, so we'll move this back to 40 meters now. So this is our second distance then. This is 40 meters with the 12-foot-pound rifle with the ballistic calculator switched off. Couple more. Well, I can see that's dropped quite a bit as you would expect, not even on the target, but we'll do that again with the ballistic calculator turned on this time. So this is 40 meters in with the 2.2 rifle, 12 foot-pounds with the ballistic calculator turned on. Now don't forget this is 0 at 20 meters and you won't see the yellow cross aim point that I'm seeing, you'll just see holdover on the footage. Right, that's our 11 shots. Let's go and take a look. So this then is our target at 40 metres with the 2.2 rifle. Now with the ballistic calculator turned off, the group is here. So what's that, a drop of, I don't know, 2-3 inches maybe? And then compare that to the group with the ballistic calculator turned on. A couple went high here by the looks of it, but I would say that's 8 shots through a one whole group, just a little bit left of the bullseye, but obviously the ballistic calculator has picked up and compensated for that drop over 40 metres. Now I'm going to change the Pard NV008s LRF over from the 12 foot-pound 2.2 rifle to the FAC rifle. Give me a few minutes. There we go, as easy as that. So now I've swapped to the more powerful rifle. This is around about a 40 foot-pound 2.5 caliber FX Impact M3. I've obviously adjusted the ballistic profile in the scope. So things like the velocity is around about 938 feet per second. The pellets are 33.95 grain. I've also zeroed this for 30 meters as well. And the height from the middle of the barrel to the middle of the scope is 80 millimeters as opposed to 92 millimeters on the 12 foot-pound gun. So I'll put a target out at, so this is zeroed at 30 meters. I'll put a target out at 50 meters. And once again, we'll do 2 groups, one without the ballistic calculator, one with the ballistic calculator. I'm going to do 5-shot groups this time to save a little bit of time. So we'll do the non-ballistic calculator group first. Just record it. Right, here we go. Well, I can see those have hit just below the bottom of the target. So this is our 50 meter group with the ballistic calculator switched on. So let's start that recording. And right. Interesting, that's saying it's 54 meters. Whereas with the handheld, it was saying bang on 50 meters. Although I suppose I should allow a meter for the truck. But anyway, let's see how we get on. Safety catch. Well, let's go and take a look at the target, but I think you'll see that the calculator's starting to come into its own now. So this is 50 meters with the FX impact. Right, so you can hopefully see here the group with the ballistic calculator turned off was dropping, what, a couple of inches, a little bit spread out too, but then look at that group at 50 meters with the ballistic calculator turned on. You know, that's what, an inch or so grouping. And don't forget this is off the back of my truck as well in a bit of a crosswind. So clearly that calculator is compensating for that couple of inches loopy trajectory. Right, back to 70 meters now. So last target then, this is 70 meters with the ballistic calculator switched off. Now I've kept on 6.5 times magnification throughout just to keep the filming kind of consistent really, but obviously you've got a 13 times magnification option, which I probably normally use at 70 meters to be honest, but just to keep things consistent I've stuck with 6.5. So see how we get on. Don't know where that one went. Obviously hitting low, but how low I don't know. Right, well they look to be going below the bottom piece of tape going across and slightly to the left, so we'll switch the ballistic calculator on and see how that proves things. Right, here we go. That was just off the edge of the target. Just on the bottom edge of the target, that one. Well, let's go and see how that did at 70 meters then. Okay, so where are we? That was our group with the ballistic calculator off, and you can see the pellets hit down here. What's that, a drop of about 4 or 5 inches or so? And then with the ballistic calculator on, the grip wasn't as good, but that's no doubt down to me. But you can see that the calculator has all but an inch or so adjusted for that that drop. So not quite on the button, but definitely has compensated for the drop. So I thought it'd be interesting just to show you all the cards in one go. So these are the two 25 cal FAC rifles. Don't forget the rifle was zeroed at 30 meters. So at 50 meters with a ballistic calculator on, yeah, it was pretty much on the money. With the calculator off, you can see it was dropping low by a couple of inches or so. And then again at 70 meters with the ballistic calculator on, still a little bit low, but you know, not far off the point of aim. Compare that though to the ballistic calculator off, and you can see it's dropping by a good 4 or 5 inches or so. Now compare that to the 12 foot-pound rifle. Bear with me just a second. Where are we? There we go. Right, 12 foot-pound rifle. So this was zeroed at 20 meters. So with a 30 meter ballistic calculator off, you can see the pellets were dropping about 0.5 mil low, I would say. Ignore these are from other cars that I shot. And then with the ballistic calculator on, the group was bang on the money there. Now when we took that out to 40 meters, which is this one here, with the calculator off, I think this was probably the group here for 40 meters, so a drop of sort of 2 or 3 inches. And then with the ballistic calculator on, although there's a little bit left, the group was right on the money at 40 meters. So in terms of conclusion, you know, and I'm no expert, I'm just a bloke who managed to get hold of an NV008s LRF earlier than most other people and have a play with it. Having said that, I have used the old product for quite a few years. Now, it seems to me that without doubt, the ballistic calculator function definitely works. You know, there's no question of that. It takes out 99% of the guesswork as it relates to compensating for the loopy trajectory of an air rifle. It doesn't take it out 100%. You also have to factor in windage still. There's no ability to compensate for windage. And I would say that if you're going to use one, it's definitely worth spending plenty of time on the range, just fine-tuning that ballistic profile to make sure it's absolutely accurate for your specific setup. Now, the other thing I'd also say is that just because you have a ballistic calculator on your scope on your rifle, it doesn't make you a better shot. You know, all it does, it just helps you compensate for trajectory. So don't start thinking that you can take shots at 2 or 3 times the distance you normally would just because you have a ballistic calculator. Anyway, sermon over. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing as well. And don't forget to check out our website, alphamilitaria.com. Thanks for watching.